In 1989, the birth of Gojo Satoru changed the power balance of the world, essentially ending the careers of most cursed and cursed users. He, at a young age, had 100 million bounty put on him. He was the first person in 400 years to have both the Six Eyes and Limitless technique, and when two assassins came to kill him, he literally stopped them by staring at them. Gojo from birth was already the strongest of his time, but was he actually the strongest of all time? Well, in his words, yes, but was Gojo actually the strongest of all time when compared to this monster? This monster's name is Ryomen Sukuna, and he was basically the ruler of an entire era. Hailed as the king of curses, Sukuna was so strong that all the sorcerers of his era united together to fight him, and they still lost. The only person that could defeat Sukuna was Sukuna himself, because the only way that he technically died was when he split himself into 20 cursed fingers. Sukuna was so strong that with his technique he cut through space and time itself, and when he wasn't even at full power, he defeated a Shikigami whose literal ability was to adapt to any situation. The Shikigami was so strong that no sorcerer in its existence had ever tamed it, but in one battle Sukuna literally cut it into pieces. Now Sukuna, for all the time he was alive, was undoubtedly considered the strongest. However, would the existence of Gojo dethrone Sukuna from his title of strongest of all time? Well, the short answer is no. Because while Gojo was the strongest of his time, there is a difference between the strongest of an era and the strongest ever. However, this didn't mean that Gojo was a pushover, as every sign since his birth seemed to show that Gojo could be the strongest. Before Gojo was born, the world had already been changing in anticipation of his birth. Cursed spirits year by year have been getting stronger, and it was all because the universe knew that the birth of Gojo would change the balance of the world. Gojo's strength was such an issue that his enemies put in over 100 million yen bounty on his head, only for every bounty hunter to fail. Some of the bounty hunters, even before attempting to kill Gojo, got so scared that all they could do was shake in fear. Now Gojo was so untouchable because he was the first person in 400 years to be born with the Limitless technique and the Six Eyes. The Limitless technique allowed Gojo to basically manipulate and distort space, and the Six Eyes allowed Gojo to have super precise control over his cursed energy, basically unlocking the full potential of the Limitless technique. With these abilities, Gojo became literally untouchable, that is until he fought this guy. This guy's name is Toji Fushiguro. Toji had a rare condition where he was born with no cursed energy, and this phenomena gave him supernatural strength and the added effect of being nearly impossible to sense. For all of his life, if he just stood behind someone, they wouldn't even notice his presence. However, Gojo was the one and only person that even when Toji was standing behind him, he could notice Toji's presence. At that moment, Toji understood how special Gojo was, but years later, Gojo only became stronger. Years after his first meeting with Gojo, Toji left his family and used his powers to become a renowned assassin known as a sorcerer killer. Because of his status, Toji was then hired to kill the Star Plasma vessel who just happened to be protected by none other than Gojo. Using various tactics and a busted cursed weapon, Toji was able to slice through Gojo's techniques and seemingly deliver a fatal blow. However, Gojo through this experience fully unlocked his techniques and became even stronger. Now how did Gojo survive a literal true crimes murder scene? He somehow learned in a matter of minutes how to heal himself. Reverse curse technique is a process where two sources of negative curse energy are turned into positive energy, which can be used to heal injuries. Even though this technique sounded simple, it was actually very difficult for most sorcerers to do. However, in a matter of minutes, Gojo somehow managed to figure this technique out and not only heal himself, but use the technique to make his other abilities stronger. By using the reverse curse technique, he was able to use his Six Eyes technique infinitely and created a new technique called Red. By creating Red, he was able to combine it with his technique Blue and to use technique Purple, basically creating the rainbow. After learning all these techniques, Gojo easily defeated Toji and solidified his place as the strongest of his time. That is until Sukuna fully reincarnated. Sukuna from the beginning of Jujutsu Kaisen was seen as the big bad villain. Known as the king of curses and the strongest of the Heian era, Sukuna was undefeated. He was so strong that all the sorcerers of his era tried to defeat him, but not one of them even came close. Sukuna was known as being extremely prideful and conceited, living life only for his desires, and because of his strength it made sense. The only reason that Sukuna's reign of terror ended was because he ended it himself. During Sukuna's reign, a sorcerer named Kenjaku had been cooking up the idea of a culling game. The whole point of the culling game was to evolve humanity by optimizing cursed energy, and it would pit the strongest sorcerers throughout time against each other. Kenjaku approached various people about participating in the culling game, but the biggest participant was Sukuna. Sukuna, probably out of boredom, agreed to join Kenjaku's culling game and was shown a technique to preserve his soul after death. This technique involved putting Sukuna's soul into cursed objects, and Sukuna split his soul into 20 of his fingers. For thousands of years, Sukuna lay dormant in his fingers, and many different people found and tried to destroy them. However, the fingers were basically indestructible, and the sorcerers could only put seals on them. Sukuna basically stayed dormant until one day a high schooler named Yuji ate one of his fingers and he was reincarnated inside Yuji's body. Now the ears did not soften up Sukuna at all, as he made it very clear that he intended to kill anyone that he wanted. When he was first reincarnated, he even said that he was looking forward to massacring women and children, and Sukuna would have succeeded in that if he hadn't reincarnated in Yuji. If 99.9% of the population had eaten Sukuna's finger, they would have either died or Sukuna would have taken over. However, Yuji happened to be the one person that was able to eat Sukuna's finger and not only live, but keep Sukuna under control. So Sukuna bided his time until he could fully reincarnate, but even before then his power was displayed multiple times. During an incident in Shibuya, Yuji was fed 15 of Sukuna's fingers, which let Sukuna temporarily take control. In the ensuing aftermath, Sukuna toyed people's lives, executed whoever he felt like, and while messing around, leveled multiple skyscrapers. Sukuna was not even at full strength, but he struck fear and overpowered everyone that came across his path, including the untamable Maoranga. Maoranga was a Shikigami that could be summoned by a user of the 10 Shadows technique. Users of this technique could summon Maoranga in an attempt to tame it, but in all of its history, no one had ever been able to tame it. And this was due to its main power of adapting to literally anything. Once Maoranga started to analyze the technique, it would eventually figure out how to get past it and it would always win. That is until it met Sukuna. During their fight, Sukuna was able to figure out how to get past Maoranga's adaptability and ended up using his domain Malevolent Shrine to relentlessly slash Maoranga and then blow it up. Not even at full strength, Sukuna was an unstoppable force, but when he was able to leave Yuji's body, Sukuna became even stronger. For the longest time, Sukuna had been interested in Yuji's friend Megumin because of Megumin's 10 Shadows technique. Sukuna wanted to use the 10 Shadows for himself and waited for the perfect moment to strike, and this moment came during the culling game. During the culling game, Sukuna used the disruptive moment to activate his binding vow with Yuji. Earlier on, Sukuna had tricked Yuji into making a binding vow that would allow Sukuna to take control for 1 minute. As part of the vow, Yuji would not remember anything about the vow, and Sukuna would not be able to harm anyone. However, the agreement to not harm anyone did not include Yuji himself, so Sukuna quickly ripped off Yuji's finger and force-fed it to Megumin. Because of this, Sukuna was able to transfer his consciousness to Megumin, and not only was Sukuna able to use the 10 Shadows technique, but he now had a body that he could freely control. With this new body, Sukuna was cemented as the strongest of all time, but now he was on a collision course with the other strongest of all time. Now while the culling games have been going on, Gojo had been sealed away. Actually, the only reason why the culling games were able to start was because Gojo had been sealed away. During the Shibuya incident, Kenjaku had created an elaborate plan to seal Gojo in the prison realm, and the plan succeeded. Gojo for the next 19 days stayed sealed, and during this time there were massive battles and Sukuna gained full control of his new body. Finally, when Gojo was released from the seal by Yuji and friends, Gojo came back with a vengeance. Going straight to Kenjaku, Gojo was prepared to kill him until Sukuna intervened. After both talked a bit of trash of each other, they set Christmas Eve as the day of the fight, and when Kenjaku asked Gojo if he thought Gojo could actually win, Gojo with utter confidence said, quote, "I will win." On Christmas Eve, both met to fight, and the battle was massive. The battle basically destroyed an entire city, and all anyone else could do was spectate. Some people like Yuta, who were also strong, just not as strong, wanted to help out, but realized that all they would be is a hindrance. Both Sukuna and Gojo threw curse techniques, hands, and domain expansions at each other, going back and forth in an insane battle. The fight was so next level that at a certain point, all the spectators realized that all they knew about curse energy did not apply in this fight. Gojo was literally using reverse curse technique to heal his own curse technique, and Sukuna at one point was using domain expansion and domain amplification at the same time. Throughout the fight, it was a constant back and forth, and when it seemed like one of them was going to win, the other had another trick up their sleeve. This continued on until eventually someone won the fight. Gojo, while he was fighting with multiple Maorangas, managed to use his adaptability against itself, and through multiple maneuvers used the strengthened Hollow Purple to basically blow up the city and more importantly Sukuna. After the explosion, Sukuna looked like he was near death, and Gojo looked like he was ready to deal the final blow. As Gojo relished in his victory, the spectators of the battle even proclaimed, "Gojo wins." However, this was not the case. Now when Sukuna had brought out Maoranga, Sukuna had been trying to get a model of how to get past Gojo's Infinity. Infinity was the base state of Gojo's limitless technique, and it was one of the things that made him so untouchable, literally. Infinity basically created a barrier around the user, and there were very few ways to get past it. However, because of Maoranga, Sukuna was able to bypass Infinity. Basically, the adaptation was to expand the target of the attack and made it so Sukuna's slashing attacks would not just hit the physical, but would cut through existence itself. With this adaptation, Sukuna was able to cut Gojo in half and stood over Gojo, saying that Gojo had done well. Sukuna had won.